These videos were shot and first went live in 2021 to 2023 as a part of Designer Shala's podcast, The Creative Hour on Instagram, where we interviewed unique designers and creatives on their journey in design. This is an effort to preserve those talks and help future designers and aspirants to understand design better. The views, opinions, and experiences shared in the Creative Hour podcast are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Designer Shala. Designer Shala holds no accountability or responsibility for any statements, claims, or perspectives expressed during the podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
I actually decided I wanted to be a fashion designer at the age of 5, which is insane. And I never changed my mind. Like I was so passionate all through childhood, which was just amazing. And by the end of my degree, I just felt like I had no talent because nobody thought I was any good. So why was I thinking good? And I was just in a really bad place with it, which is why I then decided to kind of have a break. So after I had my first child, I just kind of felt like, okay, this is my time now. I'm ready.
Hello. I'm so excited to welcome each one of you to the Creative Hour at Designer Shala. We are kicking off this series on fashion conversations in the design industry. We're getting leading design experts to come talk about their journeys and upcoming design experts to come talk about their journeys in the fashion and design industry in the country and internationally, of course, in an effort to make sure that bridge is created and that gap is filled for design aspirants and design lovers, and they get actual stories of fashion entrepreneurs, fashion designers, stylists, designers in different fields, and understand what is it like to be a part of this design industry and what does it feel like to actually be on the other side. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. All right, Divya. So I know that you're a fashion design major turned jewelry designer, but you're in, sort of transition in the industry, and your pivots have been very, very interesting, especially for young entrepreneurs and young fashion designers. They come with these sort of set mindsets about a career in fashion where they feel that if you've studied fashion design, we're supposed to be making clothes, but you ventured into, a skincare cosmetic brand and later on ventured into your own jewelry startup. So how did that pivot happen?
Honestly, it was quite organic. It just kind of happened naturally because I studied at uni, and then afterwards I did some internships and jobs in like design like studios. I was a pattern cutter for a while. I worked in like sample making and production, so that was like a really interesting time. And then I decided randomly to buy a house and completely renovate it. So I spent some time just working purely on that. And then I think something happened in my mind when I did my degree that even though I loved my degree in some ways, it kind of took away some of the passion for me because my design aesthetic was very different to what my tutors believed to be a good fashion aesthetic. I always loved color. I loved like incorporating like crafts, and I had quite a unique approach to design that I felt that they just maybe didn't get, because they were all about the monochrome and all about minimalism and a few things like that. So I think maybe it wasn't the best suited course for me, but even saying that, I learned a lot. But I just felt like I was in a place at the beginning of my degree where I was really passionate, really excited. I felt that I had a lot of talent. And by the end of my degree, I just felt like I had no talent. I was like wasting my time trying to do this because nobody thought I was any good. So why was I thinking good? And I was just in a really bad place with it, which is why I then decided to kind of have a break, did my house thing. And then I kind of ended up just falling into a job in a beauty store. And I did that for a while. And then I got headhunted by one of the skincare companies. And they were Sunday Riley, an American skincare company, who are amazing, but they're a company that's quite in touch with the fashion industry because they sponsor a lot of the shows. So I started working for them. I was working backstage at London Fashion Week. I was traveling to like Paris for Fashion Week, Milan for Fashion Week. I was backstage, and there's this buzz and this real atmosphere, and I suddenly remembered why I fell in love with this industry in the first place. the beautiful design, the clothing, and it just kind of reignited my passion that I'd somehow lost along the way because it kind of been chipped away a little bit. So it was kind of like a rediscovery of sorts, which was really nice. And then I ended up having a baby, as you do, because, you know, so I had a baby, and much as I loved that job, it kind of didn't make sense for me to go back to it because there's so much international travel. I didn't want to be doing so much international travel when I had a baby, but I knew that it was time for me to get back into the fashion industry because I actually decided I wanted to be a fashion designer at the age of 5, which is insane. And I never changed my mind. Like I was so passionate all through childhood, which was just amazing. So after I had my first child, I just kind of felt like, okay, this is my time now. I'm ready. I feel passionate again. I want to work for myself. I want to, you know, be my own boss. I want to do things on my terms, because having worked as a pattern cutter and as a designer, on that side of things, you spent so much time and energy and effort to bring other people's creations to life, you know, and you work hard to bring other people's creations to life. And I wanted to spend that same time and energy to bring my own creations to life. And I did think about actually starting a clothing brand. That was actually my first initial idea. But then when I really looked at the financial side of it and the business side of it, you know, having to have a new collection every season, the cost of producing that collection, I would always want to be size inclusive. So, you know, there are lots of things to consider. There's a lot of money to start it up. And I had jewelry businesses before. I had kind of made jewelry and bought and sold jewelry in the past. So I thought, oh, what about jewelry? Because I love making jewelry anyway. I've been doing it for 10 years, like on and off as a business and a hobby. It has much lower startup costs. You don't have to worry about sizing. The items are like small and light and easy to send out. So I thought, okay, let's do this. So I started basically using the design ideas and concepts that I had learned, but in my own way. And it was so nice to be able to design without the constraints of people telling me that what I was designing was bad, which was nice. And then it just kind of grew from there, to be honest, because I started the business April of 2018, and in June of 2018 I got this huge wholesale order from a boutique in like central London, and then it just kind of went from there. It just gained momentum, and I've just been growing it ever since. So yeah, I've kind of forgot. I've got off on a tangent, haven't I? I've just been talking nonstop. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's kind of...
I love it. I love how passionate you are about this journey, and it's amazing that, you know, with all the pivots, it feels like, you know, when Steve Jobs says this, right? Only when you look back, you can connect the dots and actually see how far you've come, and then it all makes sense.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. I can look back at every single thing I did in the past, and there's definitely a learning that I can take from each thing that I'm using now in this business. So it really has all come together. Because I think at the time, especially when you're young, you can kind of be doing jobs that maybe you don't feel super passionate about or love so much, and you just kind of feel like you're maybe wasting your time. But then you get to the point later on where you're like, oh, well, actually, I learned that, you know? Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And whatever job it is that you're doing in your life, and especially if you're running your own business, you will have to do things you hate, right?
Oh, definitely. I hate admin. I still have to do admin now.
Absolutely. I hate admin and I hate accounting. Two things that you need to love as a business owner. You need to know your numbers and you need to know your admin work.
Definitely.
I hate it, but gotta do it, right? It's a part of the business. It's a part of the trade. Amazing. So it's interesting how you said that, you know, your opinions or your design sensibilities as a designer didn't really work very well with your faculties at your uni, and that resulted in you feeling that you're not good enough as a designer. And it took you so much time to get over that and then embrace design again, and, you know, believe in yourself again. I'm sure you did believe in yourself and your design sensibilities, but if you've always wanted to be a designer since the age of 5, it must have been some sort of an experience to actually not want to design after, you know, studying in a university.
Yeah, I think, you know, you know, we all, you know, believe in ourselves, and I'm a big advocate, and you know, we should always think positively about ourselves and believe in ourselves. But when you're constantly daily hearing you're not good at this, you know, over and over and over again every day for 3 years, it can definitely take its toll. You know, people are only so mentally resilient, because you do start to believe that maybe, you know, all these people are right and I'm wrong. But I think, you know, you have to kind of make distance from a situation that makes you feel negative, because I truly believe that if, you know, if everyone was the same, then, you know, that's the whole point of design, isn't it? You know, to be, yeah, to bring something different to the table. But I think if I had gone to school like now compared to when I had, things would be a bit different, because so I went to university between the years of, so let me think. So I graduated in 2013. So I was there kind of, you know, a while ago now, nearly 10 years, which is crazy to think about it. And, you know, now we have this openness about so many things, like, you know, or more so at least than 10 years ago, we embrace ideas from different cultures, we embrace crafts, where we're more aware of like mental health issues, and like all these things play a part, and that kind of wasn't there then. Like there was this kind of ruthless slaughtering that you wouldn't get away with now. And I remember one like collection that I designed, and like my tutor said, like, who are you designing for? Is this for like drag queens? Like, or something like that. Like, and you know, something like that would never be said now. You know, it would just be completely unacceptable.
Was it said in a condescending tone?
Yeah, completely, like in a very negative, condescending way. And it was just because my designs were extravagant and colorful and unapologetic. And you know what, like, you know, then it was so negatively seen. But I think, you know, I think differences are much better embraced than they were before.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love that's one thing that's remained the same with you, which is being very extravagant and being very colorful and out of the box, because
Yeah.
that's what sets apart your brand from, you know, the rest out there. And since you're talking about colors, right? Colors seem to speak to you in a very different language, right? They have a very different way of. You have a very different, very unique way of expressing your designs through your colors. How is that process for you? How do colors, like, how does all of that happen? I'd love to know.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind to hear you say that, because I'm so passionate about color. So it's really, really wonderful to see that my passion for that is coming across in my brand. Because sometimes when it's your own work, it's difficult to be objective, and it's difficult to know if what you're seeing is what other people are seeing. So that's great, thank you. But no, color for me is just a huge passion. It's what it all boils down to for me. So before there's any kind of other concept, it always starts with a color palette, and I always have like maybe one or two colors in mind that I start with, and then I play around and kind of look at complementary colors that create like a very unique color palette. And I try like not to be too predictable in my color combinations. I try to find things that are eye-catching, and that's usually a starting point that leads into other areas of inspiration, I guess. So I can look at like a group of colors and I think, okay, what mood does this invoke in me? What does this make me think about? Does this make me think about a particular artist, or a particular flower, or a particular, I don't know, form of nature, or anything, you know? And then I will start looking at that in detail. Like, so for example, my upcoming collection, which I'm bringing out in the winter, you're being let into some top secret info here, is like, I started off with this idea, like golds always sell really well at Christmas for me. I do a lot of like mirror gold and gold glitter. So I was like, oh, okay, I want to incorporate that again this winter, but I want to do it in a way that's different to how I've done it before. And I was starting to think about like COVID and lockdown and what we've all experienced, in this kind of cozy cocooning that we're all doing in our homes. And it made me think of like velvet. And I was thinking, okay, like what about gold with like rich deep emerald shades and deep purple shades. And so gold and deep purple and emerald, what does that make me think of? And it made me think of like these amazing Gustav Klimt paintings, you know, with all the gold foil and the opulence and the decadence and the embellishments and all of those beautiful things. So then I started like looking through Gustav Klimt paintings, which gave me ideas for like shapes and patterns. And then I have like, you know, tracing paper or layout paper, and I trace out like random little shapes from the paintings. And I think, okay, how would that work in jewelry? Could I make it bigger? Could I make it smaller? You know, can I play around with it? And then could I add, like, how does the palette change if I add a pastel color, for example? Or how does it add if I add a darker tone? And just kind of experimenting. I think for me, the key is not feeling too precious about one piece of work or one piece of design. And just constantly being open to evolving the design and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until you feel you have like the most beautiful outcome. But yeah, I mean, I have like each earring, but by the time it's been made, it's probably been changed in design about 100 times. You know, it's crazy. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in terms of color, art is a big inspiration for me. Like, I have a few artists that I just love, and they're artists who use a lot of color and nature as well. You know, the sea and flowers.
I love, but I really do love, Divya, how your thought process is. You know, most designers would be first finding the inspiration and then finding a color palette. In your, you know, the way you explained it, you actually have a color in mind already. And then you're seeking inspiration from that color that, you know, what does this color remind you of?
Yeah.
And I love how you've reverse engineered that. And it's so interesting to see, you know, another designer's take on designing with colors as the key element. And that is why I think colors come across so beautifully in all your jewelry pieces that you do. And I think that is why they are the primary focus, which is pretty amazing and very, very interesting. So thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to see if you have any work in progress, which you could, I mean, you've already given us a sneak peek into what's happening.
Yes, I do. Yeah, so one collection that I'm actually bringing out just next month before I do the Klimt, because I tend to work like 2 or 3 collections in advance. I actually went on a beautiful seaside holiday in like June last month, so I decided to do a sea inspired collection. I actually have all this beautiful sea glass, I don't know if you can see, that I collected from the beach, which was just an amazing experience. And I used that inspiration of the sea to kind of bring up some ideas in me. And I have some like partially assembled things that I can show you. So here I have like a 18 karat gold piece that's like inspired by the reef, and then like a green drop that's going to go underneath it. And I have some clay pieces that are like little,
oh, I love it.
And a little shell and things like that. So those are going to be assembled in different ways, which is going to be cute. And then for some designs, if I'm mocking up ideas, I tend to make things in just clear perspex first, so I can get an idea. So kind of the opposite, like, you know, in terms of not using any color and kind of thinking of it as like a blank canvas. So just a few things. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see. But this is like clear perspex that's engraved. And this is actually one of the pieces, although it doesn't look like it, that was inspired by the Klimt paintings. So this top part section here will actually be gold reflective mirror. And these kind of wings will be iridescent, like a deep purple iridescent.
Wow.
So yeah, I just kind of playing around with different ideas first. This will be like a bronze mirror, and yeah, I have some sketchbooks here as well, and then also, of course, as always, I have ideas that don't quite make it to the final collection. Like here I have a reef. Ooh, wow. It kind of looks like coral reef, but there's the earring post, so it sits like this, and you kind of get the effect from the side, which is quite cool. I think I'm going to revisit this next summer because it's kind of like already July, and by the time I get it into production, it'll be kind of autumn. So I thought this is a cool idea that I'm going to leave for next year. But just playing around like this, for example, was just like freehand drawn. And then it was laser cut, which is like quite a cool way. Another thing that really excites me is like different mediums of like making things. Like the majority of my stuff is made from clay, but I also love looking at different ways of creating things, like, you know, resin and laser cutting and different things like that. Okay, so sketchbooks. I just love doing sketchbooks. I have a combination of like written notes and designs here. So I tend to just draw things over and over and over again until I just find things that like speak to me. So sometimes I will actually, like, so here, this was one of my best-selling collections, which was the dark blue stripe with the Monstera leaf. So that's a collection that I kind of drew over and over again.
Love it.
And there's lots of stuff in here that I would have designed, like, you know, 2-3 years ago even, that never got made because I just designed something better. But what's cool about just designing so much is that you can always revisit things and put like a fresh spin on them. So this is like a dash collection.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think the main thing with like sketching that I would say is different between how I sketch now and how I sketched when I was learning and at university is I was at university, like sketching was always so like such a precious thing because you knew your teachers were going to be looking at them in detail and thinking like, how was her drawing skills, and like analyzing them. So I think I would spend so long on like one image at uni. Whereas now it's very different because the only person looking at my sketchbooks is me. And the only purpose is to remind myself and my future self of what that design idea was, rather than for it to be an aesthetically beautiful image. And especially because I design like so much so quickly, it needs to just be quick sketches. So my sketchbooks aren't as beautiful as they used to be.
No, it's not about the beauty, but I love the fact how you explained this so beautifully that when you're a business owner, you're actually doing these for yourself and not to please someone else. The end product is what matters. And
definitely.
It's beautiful that you've actually managed to save and sort of store all of these design ideas for your future self. It's something that I lack as a business owner. Now the designs are so much into my head. Half the time I'm just, you know, sending things straight to production. I completely eliminate the sketching bit. I just, you know, create the technical.
It's almost like there's barely any time for it, isn't there? Yeah. Absolutely. But I have, so these again are my 2 best-selling collections. This is like the Wave collection. I kind of got rid of this one and added a different. If you know my collections, you'll know that these are now pink, so I do switch around. And I was toying with, like, I had just watched the, you know, the Great Gatsby film, and I was toying like around with the idea of like earrings with beaded tassel rather than like thread that tassel. So, you know, sometimes I'll watch a film or, you know, something like that will inspire me. And then I'm like, I love color blocking. I'm just, you know, color blocking has always been my passion. So there's always some kind of color blocking in there. Okay, so this is an interesting page because, so, you know, I was saying like with the Gustav Klimt, like I was just kind of sketching. So this was like, I remember this was at like 2 a.m. And this is just random shapes that caught my eye within the paintings. And you can see this here, this kind of wing shape. That was actually me tracing out the sleeve of a dress on one of the women in a painting. And that, as you saw, was like, ended up being, where is it? This little shape at the bottom here. So these kind of abstract ideas and patterns, these ideas kind of just slowly develop. And I think don't ever be afraid to draw something bad. And I think this is like more so if you know you're the only one seeing it. You know, so what if you draw something that's terrible? Like, that's the way you find out that it's terrible. And these were kind of like my sea ideas. But yeah, there's so much in here. It's crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is so interesting. Thank you for being just so generous and sharing all of those ideas and your
Oh,
sketches.
of course.
I mean,
I'm happy to
considering
share.
that
It's
they're
nice to
supposed
be
to be
able to
only
inspire other people.
absolutely, considering that you'd made those sketches just for yourself, this is pretty amazing that you actually shared all of them with us. And I absolutely love it. I love how all I can see in all those sketches, that the focus for me was how your color combinations were happening. It's amazing how you think and how you visualize colors. And I love Supermoon. And, it's one of the things that actually caught my eye. Right when I looked at the brand, I was like, I love how colorful this is. But before we end this, I had one question. Why Supermoon? Why the name
Okay.
Supermoon?
So I get asked this quite often, actually. My oldest son was actually born on the night of a supermoon.
Ooh.
So I wanted the name to be something that was personal to me. But I also didn't want it to be my own name. And I didn't want it to be something that was restricted to just jewelry, or like have jewelry or clay or something like that in the name, because I have big plans for the brand in terms of expansion. So yeah, that's where it came from. And I think it's also quite memorable. It's easy to spell and easy to Google. If you tell someone about it in passing, it's quite easy for them to be, days later to be like, oh yeah, Supermoon, and just Google it. I think that's something that's really important with a brand name, because I had a few brands before that were kind of like weird obscure words that no one knew how to spell, but I thought I was being really cool, but that doesn't always help with like making you found.
I'm sure the 5-year-old Divya would be super, super happy and proud.
She's stoked.
I'm sure. We have one question from Miyasa Deseno, which says, how do you choose different materials? Is it as per the concepts, or are there any other factors?
How do I choose the materials? That's a really, really good question. So it kind of depends on what the design is in itself and what the outcome how I want it to look. So when I first started, I was only doing clay, and that was purely because that's the equipment that I had invested in at that point. And as my business has grown, I've invested in a lot more equipment, so I have lots more things open to me. And I think it ultimately is like, the design, like how is it going to look best and what medium. So for example, if I want something with a very matte surface, I'll go for clay. If I want something very glossy, high shine finish, I'll go for resin, because that lends itself better. If I want something with a very intricate shape that would be difficult to hand cut, I would laser cut that, because that you create like an Illustrator file, and it's cut with laser. And if I wanted like a mirror effect, I would go for perspex. So it kind of depends. I also use like wood and lots of other materials. Sometimes I think no material is off limits, and I think that just adds to the fun. Yeah, I think mainly like I always have an idea in my head of how the finished item will look, and that usually lends itself quite well. I actually also have a teaching platform, I don't know if you know this, for jewelry, teaching jewelry design. I have a Patreon, so I talk a lot on there, and I have a lot of tutorials on there about like how I choose materials, and what materials lend itself well to different designs. So if that's something you're more interested in with the jewelry, you can go check that out if you want to. Shameless plug there, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So we have another question saying, do you have people who work with you in production, or do you do everything by yourself?
So in terms of the business side of things, it's me and a VA. I have a virtual assistant who is amazing, and she does a lot of the admin, which, as you now know, I hate. And then on the design and production side of things, everything is the initial prototype is always made by me, because I like to have full control in how the initial design looks, the initial sample looks. But I also have a laser cutting partner who does my laser cutting for me, and that's something we work in collaboration with, to do the drawing and to do the files, and then her company cuts that for me. And then in terms of production, it kind of depends. because as I have my new like metal stuff coming out now as well, like I have my metal chunky hoops, and I have like some sterling silver pieces as well. Those I design and I have them produced for me. So it's a combination. My clay and resin, I manufacture completely myself. My perspex pieces I produce in collaboration with another company, and then my metal I design and have manufactured. So it's a combination. It's a combination.
All right, amazing. We have another question asking about how do you overcome creative blocks?
This is something that I'm actually not going to be particularly helpful with, because I am at the opposite end of the spectrum. I actually feel like I have too many ideas, and I always have more ideas than I have time or money to produce. Because I like to give each idea my full I don't know, the full potential to be what it can be. So I have so many ideas that go unused. But I would say if you're experiencing a creative block, a design block, I think put your paper down, put your pen down, and just go out there. Don't be stuck in your workspace. Don't be like, on your computer. Definitely don't be looking at other designers and what they do, because you'll always end up like being too influenced by them. My advice would be go to an art gallery, go to a museum, go for like a walk, and really like look around you, like look at the leaves, look at the animals, look at, just take in the world. And take a sketchbook and a pencil with you, out there, and you can, or take, you have your phone, take pictures. Just be open to being inspired by everything around you, I think.
That's amazing. Absolutely. The last question that I have is how do you deal with failure?
Oh, wow. You kind of know that already. I stopped for 3 years. Dealing with failure is kind of part of the parcel of being a designer and of having your own business. And that's something I've learned, having that big gap where I didn't do anything, and coming back to it, I realized that not everyone is going to love what you do all the time. It's just not possible, because everyone's too different. So I think you have to just come to a place where you can accept that and be like, okay, there are going to be a lot of people who don't like what I do, but there are also going to be people who love what I do, and just focus on the positive. Always just focus on the positive. There are failures constantly in business, and I think with social media you're constantly seeing everyone's wins and what they're doing well, and it can be quite intimidating, because you think, oh, all these people are just having so much success all the time and I'm just repeatedly failing. But actually people are just not sharing their failures.
Absolutely.
And I've certainly had many. I've reached out to lots of boutiques to see if they wanted to stock my jewelry, and lots of them did, lots of them didn't, and various things like that, so you can I think you just have to kind of learn to take it in your stride, and just focus on the positive. Yeah.
All right, awesome. I think these are great advices. And guys, if you really ask me, I'm just pipe in here and give like this one small advice. You don't really fail until you stop doing it. If you keep doing it, you're never going to fail. And that's the difference between people who actually make it work and people who don't. The ones who don't make it work, they kind of quit and give up. If you don't, there's nothing in the world that can stop you, right? Because you've not accepted defeat, so you're still in the game.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. I'm gonna live by that for sure. Like, I completely agree. Like, you didn't fail until you gave up. Yeah, and I just had a break. I didn't give up, so it's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've been a fighter through and through, and you've been always passionate about what you really want in your life. And for some of us, it takes a couple of longer turns and, the longer route. For some of us, we find it instantaneously. I shut down a business last year because of COVID. I had to take a sabbatical, shut down my business, sell my studio. But until and unless you give up on yourself, you've not really failed, right? So if you pick up your pieces, get back in the game. Because there are people out there who love you for who you are and what you do. You just have to find them.
Definitely.
One very interesting question, one last question, please. This is really cool. If you have so many good ideas, how do you prioritize which one to work with?
It's difficult. It's difficult. I think about the season that I'm designing for and see what's most relevant. I do also look at trends. I am aware of what trends are out there. I don't let them lead my decision making, but I do let them influence what I choose to go ahead with once it's already been designed. So I'm constantly looking at, you know, the runway shows to see what's happening. I'm looking at trend reports for the year ahead and, you know, looking for like key trends that would work, because then it would make sense to do a collection at a particular time. So that's something that definitely plays a part. Also just what collection I feel that would really speak to my customers, what I think they would like rather than just what I would like. Because sometimes I design a collection and I would love it and I would wear it, but actually I think, you know, that might not be the right fit for my customers. So that's customer awareness, that's another thing. And just and also, yeah, it's kind of what I love as well. You know, it plays a role, definitely. So yeah.
I see. All right. Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, bye.